Alright, so the Eagles made a couple roster moves, but there's one in particular that could have some long-term interest. Plus, even with Nick Sirianni admitting the Birds are a running football team, why might that not be enough to be successful? And we already knew Q and Coop were good, but what they're doing is just next level. So what's unlocking their full potential, and how can they take advantage of that versus Cincinnati? Let's talk about it. But first, let's run it. What's up, guys? Quick reminder to hit that subscribe button if you want a chance to win this autographed Saquon Barkley helmet. And speaking of Saquon, the NFC Player of the Week was at the 76ers game to ring the bell and get things started. Unfortunately, that didn't get Philly the dub. But you can't blame them for trying to get 26 to help get that mojo back for the season. Because Saquon is doing something the NFL has not seen in quite a while. As his 658 yards, 6.1 yards per carry, and 5 touchdown runs make the future All-Pro as the only 7th running back in NFL history with at least 600 yards, a 6.0 average, and 5 touchdowns through 6 games. With the others being Hall of Famers Jim Brown, Green Bay legend Jim Taylor, the Juice O.J. Simpson, Denver's Terrell Davis, along with should-be Hall of Famer Jamal Lewis, and future Hall of Famer Adrian Peterson. So yeah, not a bad list to be a part of. And despite some questioning if Saquon was washed, the 27-year-old actually ripped off a 55-yard run against the Giants that registered as the fastest speed ever in his entire career. Which is why Reuben Frank wrote an article saying Saquon Barkley is doing something unheard of. Like being the first NFL player in 61 years with 3 games averaging over 8 yards per carry in his first 6. However, this is the whole issue that I have with stats, because I'm sure you're sitting there wondering, wait a minute, I know that Saquon Barkley's playing good, but what on earth is Derrick Henry doing this year? And you see, well, King Henry technically doesn't qualify for that list because it took him 7 games. Although either way, now he's averaging 6.5 yards per carry. And as much as we all have an affinity for number 26, Baltimore's new back is having an insane season, with Henry ranking first in just about every category, like rushing yards, touchdowns, and yards per carry. I mean, not gonna lie, but the best part is probably the fact that Dallas could have had him and instead elected to not go all in, as now Henry has more rushing yards than 23 teams in the league. But not the Eagles, and the reason I bring that up is because the Eagles have found their identity in running the football. Heck, through 7 weeks so far, the Birds are averaging 166.7 yards on the ground, which for those wondering is second only behind the Ravens and Derrick Henry, who are at an absurd 210.9 yards per game. But as great as that is, Bleeding Green Nation's John Stolnis wrote, establishing the run is great, but establishing the pass leads to Super Bowls. Since think back to 2021 when Philly was struggling and fell to 2-5 after losing to the Raiders 33-22. Obviously, everything looked bleak until Sirianni passed the reins to Shane Steichen and he began a run-first approach that eventually led to the Eagles making the playoffs. Yet as Stolnis argues, it's hard to beat good teams when you're one-dimensional. For the record, the 2021 Eagles had the 8th worst passing game in the league that year, and went a terrible 0-7 against playoff teams during that season. Because yeah, it's obvious when you can't keep good defenses off balance that you're probably not going to get far.
They're a difficult offense to watch right now. Jalen Hurts is not playing very good football. They're a running football team. Their defense has played a lot better the last couple of weeks. Now, people can say they beat the Giants and the Browns, and that's fair because those are 2 of the lesser offenses in the league. But if you just look at what they're doing and how individuals are playing, they're playing better on defense. But the Eagles can't sustain, if they want to be a true playoff team, they can't sustain the way they played last week. Your quarterback has to be a bigger factor. Jalen Hurts, for whatever reason, Ross, and he's played a lot of football games, and you do them in the preseason, so you're familiar with him. For whatever reason, he's just not seeing things clearly right now. Basic concepts he's not seeing, and that really handicaps and hamstrings your offense when your quarterback just can't execute basic concepts, and that's what he's struggling with right now.
By the way, let me just stop and make this clear. I'm not saying the Eagles need to stop running the football. They need to continue to run the football. It's just when they do pass it, it needs to be more efficient and much more early in games. And look, I know there's a lot of nuances that go into this, but really it just comes down to figuring out the beginning of the game, as Philly ranks as the worst offense in the league in their first 2 drives of the game. However, then if you look at the remainder of the game, they finish second.
That don't make no sense.
No, it really doesn't, but am I crazy to think this offense is close to getting things figured out and back on track? I mean, again, I understand the last couple games have been against Cleveland and against New York, yet still, we actually got to see what the makeup of this team is and how the defense can play to its full potential if the offense will get a lead. I don't know, what do you guys think? Because I'm curious. Yes, sure, there's always outliers, but do you believe, or are you buying into the whole establish the passing debate? And if so, to what extent are we talking about? Anyway, as you're letting me know in the comments, let's get into a couple roster moves from the Birds, as they announced that they signed O-lineman Jack Driscoll to the active roster, while also signing defensive tackle Siaki Ika to the practice squad, and asking Parris Campbell to come back once again.
We want you back, if you'll have us.
Okay, so first off, totally understand the questioning the Parris Campbell move. Because you're right, he's technically already been elevated 3 times, meaning he can't play again this season unless he were to get signed again to the active roster. But, he's a veteran and injuries happen, so maybe not the worst move. Plus, maybe that says something about the lack of trust in Jahan Dotson at this point, as Philly's wide receiver 3 has what ESPN's Seth Walder calls an almost impressively poor 0.2 yards per route run this season.
I'm not even mad. That's amazing.
Sorry, I still can't believe the lack of usage. It's like they're literally just giving out free picks at this point, considering the recent compensation for the Devontae Adams trade to the Jets, or the D-Hop trade to the Chiefs. However, while the Dotson situation does not make a whole lot of sense, there's one pick that is a guaranteed winner. Underdog. Because not only are they the official sponsor of the channel, but they're giving out free promos every single day during the month of Boostober. Plus right now, first-time customers can get a free Victor Dub automatic dub, or even a free Sunday Night Football pick for this weekend. So if you want that pick along with $1,000 in bonus cash, then just scan the QR code or use my link in the description with the code PhillySpecial. Oh yeah, by the way, with the NBA season tipping off, even if you're not the best sports pick'em picker, Underdog's got you covered. Because every NBA entry this weekend automatically gets a 20% boost in payouts. And also, I know those of you in Philly aren't able to do the pick'em yet, but they do have the draft option open, meaning weekly fantasy basketball leagues are in play. So again, if you want to join the best option in fantasy sports as well as helping out the channel, then scan the QR code or use my link in the description along with code PhillySpecial to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Alright, but back to these roster moves. The signing of Jack Driscoll makes sense, especially when you think about Mekhi Becton being out with a concussion injury, meaning Tyler Steen will most likely get the start here. And considering Jordan Mailata is already out with Fred Johnson filling in at left tackle, you definitely needed some swing tackle depth. Although I'm with you, the idea of Driscoll playing a snap doesn't necessarily bode well with me, but at least it's some depth. Anyway, on the topic of depth, personally, my most exciting signing for Philly these last few moves was the defensive tackle Siaki Ika. FYI, he's a Baylor guy, and I went to Baylor, so yeah, there's a natural affinity there, but still, I think that ultimately this could potentially turn into a long-term play. By the way, in case you're not familiar with Ika, he's a former third-round pick by the Cleveland Browns in the 2023 draft, who ended up playing a grand total of 100 snaps but didn't log any stats, leading to the Browns waiving him back in August before briefly considering him for the practice squad and then eventually just moving on. But even with the lackluster performances and a very small sample size, at 6'3", 335 pounds, Ika could be a good long-term solution when it comes to nose tackle depth. As even when he was drafted, the 23-year-old was said to be a little bit raw, although the general consensus based on multiple scouting reports was that he could eventually turn into an average starter due to his excellent first contact ability to play with leverage, while also showcasing a unique awareness against down blocks and a quickness to penetrate run plays. Now again, in his limited snaps, he did not do very much and he definitely looked overmatched. Plus, obviously, there was a reason Cleveland felt like they'd be better off to let him go. Yet on the flip side, the other argument to that is the Browns definitely didn't seem to use him properly. I mean, he still may turn out to be nothing, but the ultimate difference maker for me is that Vic Fangio at least sees something to say, you know what, let's take a chance on him, possibly turn him into something, and you add him there for depth at the nose tackle. But no, I'm also not saying that he's going to upstage a guy like Moro Ojomo, who's been on a tear recently, or even guys like Thomas Booker or Milton Williams. However, if Jordan Davis went down, then it wouldn't hurt to have that depth. And I will say, let me know if you guys are with me on this, but it'd be nice to have a failed experiment from another team work out for a change, as opposed to some of the recent experiences like Kevin Byard, who Howie traded for last season and seemed like he might have been washed, only to see him this season in Chicago and ultimately realize, nope, that was all coaching. For the record, Byard is in the top 3 when it comes to safety grades this season. But all we can do is move on and hope Devin White does not become the same story out in Houston, with a former Pro Bowler officially signing with the Texans to play on the D'Amico Ryans defense. And given Ryan's track record, I don't have the most confidence in the Eagles not regretting that decision.
I have a very bad feeling about this.
All I'm saying is keep close eye on if and when Devin White sees the field. I mean, if he does play well, Philly has no one to blame but themselves. Like, this is a group that gave White first-team reps all preseason just to never let him see any of the field and then eventually cut him. And now it looks like we get to see really if that was the right decision. And considering the Cincinnati offense will present a lot more challenges than New York, that could be a problem. Because look, kudos to Nakobe Dean for playing much better recently, but I think it's fair to say if left on an island, Dean will most likely struggle against pass catchers, with Fran Duffy's recent take being the further away from the middle of the field he goes, the more his limitations will show up. And that's completely true. However, that's also the huge advantage of having a guy like Cooper DeJean and the impact he has on the defense.
All right, so the Eagles' first sack of the game comes via Josh Sweat. It's 3rd and 6 early on, first quarter, and you see Josh Sweat lined up in a 2-point stance outside the tight end. Now remember, the Giants have their backup left tackle in, so they're going to keep the tight end here on 3rd down just to help Chip before he releases on his route, just to give that tackle some extra help. but he beats the chip from the tight end inside, swats the hands away from the tackle on the outside, and he's able to get home to quarterback Daniel Jones for a sack. Now, Jones was looking in the middle of the field here, and why was he looking in the middle of the field? Well, he had Wan'Dale Robinson, who had been their leading target getter on third down by a wide margin, and not just like when Malik Neighbors is out, but even when Neighbors is in, Wan'Dale Robinson is the go-to guy on third down. He comes in motion here, and he wants to run the crossing route, and look at the job from Cooper DeJean, Nakobe Dean, and Reed Blankenship here on passing this off. This is really good execution on the back end from the Eagles defense. You can see as soon as Robinson clears DeJean, DeJean's already passing him off. You see the communication there on the back end. Dean, he's got his eyes on it. He takes one peek at Robinson, sinks into the passing lane, and as he's passing through that, look at Reed. He's jumping downhill, jumping this route. And so Daniel Jones had no room to be able to squeeze this ball in. By the time he was able to get his eyes out to the perimeter, Josh Sweat's already getting home for the sack. Rush and coverage married together. Really good job in the middle of the Eagles defense there by those three. Let's go to a little bit later. This is the second quarter here, and this is a sack for Jalen Carter. And you can see him work in the middle. He's one-on-one against the right guard, gets home for the swim move. Nice pressure there from Milton Williams to help set that up. He's pushing the double team back into Jones's pocket, and Carter is there for the cleanup. So nice job there from the Eagles defense. But what happened in the middle of the field? What happened? What was Daniel Jones looking at? And why did he not throw this football? Well, once again, you've got Wan'Dale Robinson coming in motion, but look at the job that Nakobe Dean and Cooper DeJean do of being tied to those little hitch routes. As soon as those receivers get into their break, look at both of the defenders also break down and get into the passing lanes, deter any throw, and that gives the rush time to be able to get home.
Okay, I thought that Coop would play well, but seriously, I didn't think that he would play this well this quickly. Yet maybe we should have with how dedicated defensive backs coach Christian Parker is in developing the rooks.
Yeah, he spends a lot of extra time with them. You know, he'll meet with them in his office one-on-one a good bit. Does a good job putting together teaching handouts, teaching cut-ups to do a good job of explaining what we're expecting.
Also, why that's perfect is because Christian Parker is the same guy that developed Patrick Surtain and helped him to get acclimated to the NFL game. For the record, I'm not saying PS2 wasn't already good, but Parker helped him get to the next step. However, it was the mindset to be great that set him apart. Okay, but the good news is that it sounds like the Rooks have the exact same mindset because Parker told Dave Zangaro that Q and Coop actually send him pictures of what they want to go over and different highlights and film and everything else, and then they show up in his office before practice and before games to go over it. And his office is always open, but he's told them to never come to his office without any information or insight already, citing the wisdom in needing to know how they're seeing things and what their takeaways are so that he can understand how to translate and apply it in a way that they'll understand. And having said that, it's fair to say that both of the Rooks' appetite to learn and grow has been felt.
I see two guys that love the game of football and are willing to do everything they can to get better at it. Highly competitive guys, very serious about football. Good teammates, work really hard. All those things that you see out of these guys on a daily basis. And it's good to have their youth and energy out in the field.
It's still crazy that they both landed in Philly, but this week's going to be a challenge. And saying that, as much as I enjoy seeing DeJean return punts, I'm with Vic Fangio about seeing the Rook handle special teams duties.
Are you worried at all about Cooper returning punts if he ends up, he has ended up being a big part of the defense? You worry about him being on the field for that when you need him defensively as much as you do?
Yes.
How do you address that?
I don't. In Navarro Bowman, going back to my San Francisco days, who was an all-pro there for 3 straight years, he covered every punt for us for 3 straight years. And I didn't like that either. So you just got to deal with it.
Yeah, well, I imagine we won't see him back there anymore. I get the whole Bowman comparison and everything else there, but Bowman was not a punt returner. Again, I love seeing the returns, but Coop's more valuable to this squad in the nickel. I mean, no offense to Vontae Maddox, but if 33 were to go down, is that who you want manning the slot?
We're going to give you this. It's a rape whistle. You blow that if you're in any trouble, and someone will come and help you out.
Sorry, but it's especially a given when you look at the opponent this week and consider that they are going to continue to attack in the passing game. Like, it doesn't get much more difficult than Jamar Chase and T. Higgins in terms of wide receiver duos. Plus, believe it or not, the Eagles have never beaten the Bengals, as the closest the Birds have gotten was actually in their last matchup, which was in 2020 during the COVID year when the game ended in a 23-23 tie.
What do you remember from that game in 2020?
We tied. It wasn't very fun.
Are you I was thinking about this, are you kind of upset that Fletcher Cox isn't playing anymore?
I can't say that, no. He's a great player, always was, always disruptive, so I'm glad he's retired.
But was there a part of you that maybe wanted to kind of get back after the hit in 20?
No.
When John played?
No, I hope he's still sitting on his couch, enjoying a nice steak dinner or something, and stay off the field.
Was that game the most you've been hit and the hardest you've been hit?
That's tough to say. It was so long ago now. I remember getting hit a lot, but I remember getting hit a lot of times, so that's football.
Okay, just another bit of history for you, but Philly failed to score in the first quarter in that game too. But I'll break down in a future video how they'll be able to finally score and why you should be confident in that. Until then, though, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications because remember, we're going to give away the Saquon Barkley signed helmet as soon as the channel gets to 80,000 subs. Until next time, this has been the Philly Special.